All right, everyone. Welcome into a new edition of Celtics Beat. Adam Kaufman, Evan Valenti, of course, you know him well, our producer, sometimes host, and Tom Westerholm from Mass Live joins us, good friend of this program. Tom, how are you, buddy?
I'm good, man. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, pleasure. Now, I mean, you don't know this, you weren't with us, but Evan certainly knows this. The last time we did a show was 10 days ago. Like it, on good pods like yours, the Genotime podcast, you go, often. People get to hear from you all the time. We're lazy here. We go every once in a while. So it's been 10 days since we did a show. And the reason for that, so people understand, don't just actually think we're lazy, is this. So last time we spoke, it was pre-everything. It wasn't the NBA draft yet. It was, trades weren't even happening yet officially. You didn't have the start of free agency. And then we thought, okay, well, we could react right after the draft, but we knew we were going to have the Gordon Hayward news, or at least some form of it. Enes Kanter, Semi Ojeleye, Daniel Theis, guys like that. Let's push a little bit. And then there was all this nonsense that we'll get to concerning Gordon Hayward, which unfortunately still is not resolved. So we was like, let's just go to the last possible moment, which is a Sunday evening release, in hopes that it breaks down by then. Instead, I have... it's been 10 days and about 7,000 tweets by me since we last had a show. And here we are. And I think we all, as Celtics fans, followers, supporters, critics, whatever you happen to be, let's all just so much has happened. I don't have a single note in front of me. I don't need it. It's all up here. So much has gone on concerning this team from, as we know, this is not the most important, but it's just relatively fresh. Daniel Theis is back. Enes Kanter traded away. Semi Ojeleye is back, or at least his contract is. Vincent Poirier traded away. Gordon Hayward is going to be a Hornet in some way, shape, or form for money that cannot even be defended by Michael Jordan. I don't understand it. 4 years, $120 million. Not to bury the lead, Jason Tatum is going to be around for the next at least 5 years, maybe 6, maybe all eternity, but at least the next 5. He has signed a massive contract that is the max. We all expected it, a 5-year extension, but the 5th year is a player option, but a 5-year extension up to $195, $200 million, could be as low as around 163 or so. All the cap semantics we don't need to get into. Fact of the matter is, all people really care about, he's on the books and he's not going anywhere. The Jays are locked up. They're signed up. And of course, the draft. Celtics needed shooters. They went out, they got a couple of shooters. Aaron Nesmith out of Vanderbilt. They got Peyton Pritchard out of Oregon. They traded that 30th pick in a deal to acquire a couple more second rounders. I don't even know if that one has been made official yet. And you also have Yam Madar out of Israel, who, don't concern yourselves with him. He's a, draft and stash. You're not going to see him anytime soon. And fans are probably just disappointed that it's Yam and not Yam. So here we are. We're all caught up. We're trying to take a deep breath with all this.
So you should take a deep breath yourself here.
That's it.
That was awesome.
You guys are going to be lucky if you get to say anything in the next 10 minutes. There's so much. There's so much to get to, and I made the mistake of tweeting out asking for questions right before we came up, and we're going to answer as many of them as we possibly can at the end of the show. But first, let's get to this. Were you, Tom, as blown away, and we'll do the draft and all that, but Hayward is the biggest thing. Were you as blown away as I think certainly we were and everybody was? Not that he's not coming back next year. I never thought he was coming back next year. That would have been kind of an upset, but not as big an upset as him landing in Charlotte for $30 million a year, coming off 3 injury-plagued seasons.
I mean, it's absolutely wild, and especially when you consider that they had to waive Batum, and so it stretch and waive Batum, so it actually adds up to like $39 million. Like when you take it all into account, like that they're spending so much money to employ Gordon Hayward, and he's a really good player when he's healthy. Like I get that he was going to be expensive, but I was blown away. I mean, I thought, I figured he probably had like a decent deal lined up. If you're going to opt out of $34 million, like you must have something, and for him to get like not just a decent deal, but like, I mean, he's barely going to lose any money on the front end, like in the first year of his contract. So, I mean, like just an absurd amount of money, and like something the Celtics just obviously, I mean, they certainly would have loved to have had him back. He would be a very useful player and, probably better than anybody else that they, could have locked up this offseason. But at that kind of money, you just think like, that's absurd. And, we'll see how it works out for Charlotte. Again, he's good. He's a veteran. He might be nice next to LaMelo Ball, but that was a lot more money than I would have been comfortable handing to Gordon Hayward at this stage in his career.
Oh, I didn't even mention off the top. Holy crap, like an idiot. Shame on you guys for not mentioning this. Tristan Thompson's here and Jeff Teague is here. Okay. Like, by the way. Yeah. By the way, you know,
the guys they did get.
and Brad Wanamaker is gone. And I bring that up because obviously, you know, so far, I'm not going to call this offseason an all-out win. That would be Homer level to the next level. However, if you want to just piecemeal it, kind of, Tristan Thompson is an upgrade over Enes Kanter, and I don't understand anyone that would feel any differently, and I don't think many people do. Jeff Teague is an upgrade over Brad Wanamaker. Again, same thing that I just said about that last one. There is no downside to that whatsoever as compared to Wanamaker, and God bless the guy, loved him, best of luck in Golden State. The Celtics have upgraded. The only question here becomes, what happens with this Gordon Hayward situation? He's not back, similar to Al Horford, who, of course, goes to Philly, gets dumped to the Thunder. That contract looked bad immediately. Gordon Hayward's contract may look bad immediately. Hell, it maybe already does because, you know, as you mentioned, you could argue it's $39 million a year. He was not getting paid coming off of 3 healthy seasons where he was an all-star for the Celtics in an alternate reality. He still wouldn't have commanded $40 million a year on the open market. So this deal, for so many reasons, doesn't make sense to me. But putting that aside, this situation is not complete yet. Are you under the assumption that I am, that we're still just waiting for the sign and trade, that the Celtics are going to get something out of this?
That really does seem to be the most logical outcome here. Like, just if you just look at it, you know, kind of analytically, it's like, okay, so like this deal could have been consummated already. Like, I think that the Hornets probably, you know, I don't want to say they owe the Celtics a favor because that's not really how NBA business works. But like the Celtics helped them out last year with Terry Rozier getting there, and you know, it's pretty much no skin off their back to help the Celtics out here and get them a sign and trade. Like that just seems like, you know, decent, you know, way to do your business. So and that would be pretty easy to execute if you weren't trying to work something else into the deal. So I don't know if anything's going to come together. I think it's perfectly possible that the Celtics are trying to do something a little complex here and, you know, maybe nothing comes out and we just don't know. And, you know, at that point, it could just be that the Celtics get a traded player exception back that they can try to use. But yeah, I mean, it does kind of feel like there might be something brewing, like something might be coming down the pike, and I will be fascinated to see what that might be.
I'm just hoping for that $20 or $30 million massive trade exception. But yeah, Evan, I mean, thoughts obviously on Hayward going to Charlotte, but also where do you fall on the whole Danny Ainge situation? Because as we know, Twitter erupted. It was fire Danny. Danny sucks. How is Miles Turner not here? How is Dougie McBuckets not here? How is Gordon Hayward gone for nothing? And I think what we're seeing here is Gordon Hayward's not gone for nothing. Not yet. I don't believe he will be. But I don't think that Indiana trade, if it ever existed in the first place, which we don't know, was the answer anyway.
Well, yeah, you could break it down in a couple different ways. First thing is the Danny Ainge blew it thing, and this whole Indiana part of this equation is complicated because, like, in order and this is, I think people have regurgitated this enough that I think it got pounded into people's heads the past 24 hours. I think people now have a better understanding of this. Danny Ainge.
It doesn't matter. Haven't you ever heard "Talk to Me Like I'm 5"?
That's true.
What I think
that's
people
true.
need right now.
I feel like it's gotten to enough points where, like, I think people are starting to get it. The Indiana thing was, you know, a good way out as long as Gordon, like, signed for the amount of money that Indiana's willing to pay him. I think we've all figured out at this point that Indiana was not going to go to 4 years, $120 million. No, nor should they. So Gordon's, you know, it's either, and I've seen the report of, like, it was maybe 4 years, $100 million is what they would have offered. I mean, I don't know. I haven't seen the actual number or figure come out yet, but that was the speculation. So Gordon turned down $20 million, or did not turn down $20 million. He just got an extra $20 million to not go home. I think, yeah, he did all right there. So understand, like, the Indiana trade there is only available if Gordon signs the deal that Indiana wants him to play for, right? So once Charlotte comes in with a $120 million offer, the Indiana trade, like, oh yeah, see you, bye, like, it's gone. So now you have to evaluate this separately. Now, you know, Gordon leaving for a traded player exception isn't the best thing in the world. I'll be honest with you, it's not. It's really, really terrible in terms of, like, losing a really good asset for relatively nothing. Like, okay, they get a TPE and maybe they use it. I mean, you never know. Maybe there's some disgruntled player somewhere they can you know, somehow get into the Celtics roster somehow. But don't be
probably
surprised
if that Bogdan, by the way.
Well, I mean, that's just, like,
probably not landing here for people wondering.
That's just not. I mean, it's going to be there, but I mean, how often do TPEs get not used? You know what I mean? Like, I feel like a lot of times they expire. I mean, this is a sizable one potentially, so maybe there's a little bit more of an effort to make that work. But, I mean, it just looks bad for Danny. But it only looks bad for Danny because MJ and his crew are a bunch of morons. They're literally paying $40 million a year for the next 3 years to have only one guy play for them and literally get Nick Batum out of there. I was kind of hoping that Batum would sign with the Celtics for a veteran minimum deal and just would be a hilarious just fortune reversal. But I mean, people killed Ainge at first, totally get it. But this isn't Ainge's fault if people are going to be stupid and sign huge contracts to players that have huge risks. Al Horford, I mean, I love Al. Don't get me wrong, big fan. Al Horford giving him the money that he got was absolutely insane, and Philly had to dump Al with 2 picks, including 1 first-rounder, to get rid of him. Now here we have MJ giving a guy who's never been healthy the past 4 years $120 million. I mean, sometimes it's just bad luck, and I understand people want to have blame somewhere. They want to put somebody's head on a pike or something. I get it, but this isn't Danny's fault. This is just MJ being stupid, handing out an absolute ludicrous contract. I just why? What is the point of adding Gordon Hayward? What timeline are you on? Like, what are we doing? Like, you just drafted LaMelo Ball, right? You just drafted LaMelo. You have Terry Rozier as the most veteran guy on your team at this point, right? Terry Rozier. You have Miles Bridges,
two guys, by the way,
Graham.
who reportedly didn't love each other in Boston. If we're just to put that out there,
right?
Rozier and Hayward reportedly, there are a whole bunch of stories about them not exactly being on the same page.
I just don't none of this makes sense, and everybody wants to cream Ainge, but it's well, what is this? And let's talk about what seed is Charlotte gunning for? 8 and 9. I mean, it's not like people got worse. I mean, Indiana's going to take maybe a step back because it seems like it's a little weird going on in Indiana right now. But think of the teams in front of them. A lot of them, got better or will get better with marginal increases in their roster. What is Charlotte's going in for the 7th seed, so they get smoked by Brooklyn in the first round? What is this?
They're taking themselves out of the Cade Cunningham stakes in the process. They could have been bad enough to get one of these really top picks in 2021 too.
Right. And
what was the justification in paying Hayward and not paying Kemba Walker, who was the franchise also?
Yeah.
It's just a bad look. It's just a bad look. It's a bad look. And I know people want to kill Ainge for this because he's not going to get anything out of this Gordon Hayward deal. It sucks. I totally get it. But what has just happened 2 off seasons in a row is ludicrous. Absolutely ludicrous that other teams have done that. It's just hysterical to me. It's hysterical. And unfortunately, it affects the Suns in a negative way. And I think Danny did an okay job trying to figure it out on the fly again. I mean, I'll give Danny a lot of credit. He's lost Al Horford and Gordon Hayward, but those 2 guys have been poached off their roster with stupid contracts. And Danny's turned it into Kemba, Tristan Thompson, Jeff Teague. He's trying. So I'll give him credit for that. But I just, 24 hours later, I just still can't believe how dumb MJ is. Sorry.
Well, also, do people – rhetorical question, I hope. But, for all the people, I hate to even, mention him because I'm going against everything I believe. But for the Nick Wrights of the world, or the Stephon Brodys of the world, or all the people out there that are getting all this social media traction for saying, well, there goes another, max free agent signing by Danny Ainge out the door before even finishing out his contract, meaning obviously not opting in for the player year. Is there a single Celtics fan out there that is thinking to themselves, you know what, man, I wish Danny gave Al Horford 4 years and $120 million or whatever it is that the Sixers gave him. Maybe one of you can remember. Or I wish, Gordon Hayward off of 3 years in which he didn't look a damn thing like he did in Utah, except for in fleeting moments, and finish the year hurt. So he's still going into next year with that as a lasting memory, even if he's healthy in camp. That's your lasting memory is that playoff finish for Gordon Hayward, which, by the way, not his fault. Freak injury after freak injury. It is not his fault that he's probably going to go down as the worst free agent signing of Celtics history, short of Rick Pitino, that he did this over the course of those 3 seasons, all starting within 6 minutes of his Celtics career. Did anyone want to give him 4 years, $120 million? No. The only thing that Danny is getting beaten over, the head with is how did this deal that may or may not have even existed not get made with the Pacers? And the only thing that I say to that, well, I have a lot of things to say to that, but the main thing that I say to that is Miles Turner sucks at basketball. Like I don't understand the infatuation with Miles Turner other than the fact that he's young, he's a name, and he blocks a bunch of shots.
Yeah, I mean, that was the thing that I was going to bring up too. That Pacers deal that was reported just wasn't that good unless they added something good to it. And there really wasn't like a comfortable way to sort of, make it a middle ground. Because I agree with you. I think like Tristan Thompson is a better pickup than Miles Turner would have been. Turner can protect the rim, but the Celtics, didn't really have that much of a rim protection problem with Tice. Like he played really well. Tice is versatile. Like Thompson is big and can kind of guard against some of those really powerfully built Eastern Conference centers. And like, not for nothing, like Turner just really struggles against Joel Embiid. Like he's not the answer against him. So like, sure. Like, Miles Turner can do some things. Like he can space the floor to the 3-point line. He can block shots, but he doesn't really rebound. He doesn't really give you any muscle inside, and he can't really switch out to the perimeter. So he doesn't really bring the Celtics anything that they desperately need. And he's $18 million a year. Like, I don't necessarily see why, like, bringing on $25 million combined between him and Doug McDermott was like a great, like a great option. Like, I don't know that that's better than a traded player exception. I really don't. So if you think it's bad money, then I don't think it is. So yeah, I mean, I agree with you there. I think that's something that got lost a little bit yesterday, although it does kind of seem to be coming around a little bit more today in the way that everybody's talking.
Here's another thing too, with now that this Tatum deal is done, and I don't think anyone was worried about it happening. It was inevitable it was going to happen. I know some people, because this is how Celtics fans are built, and I will include myself in this, people freak out about any sort of what could go wrong. Well, I get that in 2025 he'll have a player option, and it's possible that at 27 years old or wherever he'll be at that point, he could leave. Yes, that is possible. Can we enjoy the next 5 years of Jason Tatum before we worry about him maybe leaving when he has a player option? I know this is a little fresh with Hayward and with Horford, but 2025. So you get the Jays locked up. A couple of perennial future All-Stars as far as I'm concerned. Hopefully a top 5 player in the NBA going forward in Jason Tatum by the time that he really gets into his prime, which he is, he's still years away technically from hitting his prime years. And Jaylen Brown is only getting better by the year and could have been an All-Star this past season. So you have those guys locked up. It's 5 for the next Tatum, 4 for the next for Brown. Kemba Walker is another 2 years before his player option. Marcus Smart has another 2 years before he hits free agency. That's your core, not like younger guys that could turn into something like whether it's Neesmith or Pritchard or Langford or the Williamses, Grant and Rob, like young guys notwithstanding, the core guys that we know about, we know what they are and what they hope to be. You don't have any bad contracts on the books going forward if you're the Celtics, with the exception of maybe Kemba's knee, which still scares me to death. And I understood I don't know if there was validity in Danny Ainge shopping him around and trying to make a Drew Holiday swap, but those rumors didn't surprise me at all, Tom. I understood it. I thought it would have been we've talked about this a lot in the show, so we don't need to really dive in. It would have been a really bad look for PR reasons to trade away, arguably the best free agent signing you've ever had in Kemba Walker, a year removed because of a knee injury, but it's also business. And that knee, understandably, should be petrifying for the Celtics going forward for Kemba Walker. That's the only potentially bad contract they've got on the books right now.
Yeah, I mean, like I see what you're saying. I think that it's worth, seeing what Kemba can do a little bit next year, obviously, before we declare it a potentially disastrous contract. But it's, we'll see how he ages for sure. I still kind of, I think there's reason to have hope for him. I mean, he's been very healthy throughout his career. I don't necessarily know that, one season where he was a little banged up is necessarily going to be representative going forward. I know there's a counter argument that's but he put all those miles on his knee by playing all those games before. And that's certainly fair too. But I mean, he's a guy who really cares about basketball. I think that he's going to be somebody who really tries to prolong his career, tries to maintain his edge for as long as he can. So yeah, I mean, I wouldn't feel bad about having him around at all. I think that he's going to be a nice player moving forward. But to your point, there really is not a bad deal on this roster. And I think that like you said, there was some freak out about Tatum having that option on his final year. And I'm just like, I don't think that like, what did you want them to do? Like, he is the face of the franchise. I really think that like whatever he walked in with and said, here's what I want, maybe there was some small pushback about like, can we please have you for one more year? And he just like, no, the player option. At that point, what are you going to do? He is the guy that you need to keep happy now going forward. And I think pretty much like what he asks for, you have to just kind of give him at this point.
And so people are aware, Donovan Mitchell, same thing in Utah, by the way. So it's not like it was just Jason Tatum that, and any other rookie was the guaranteed 5. He got a player option as well. But Evan, I just don't, there's not a lot. I realize the Gordon Hayward situation, we'll get questions from it from Twitter people in a little while, but there's still some uncertainty, and in a perfect world, it'll break in the next 5 minutes while we're still talking about it.
100%.
But other than that, like the Celtics continue to be building in the right direction, especially with those offseason moves. I don't think, because people are still kind of pissed off for whatever reason about not getting Miles Turner, I don't think the Tristan Thompson and Jeff Teague additions are getting enough love.
Well, it's because people, again, I get obsessed with potential and the idea of Miles Turner being a rim running, not 3 shooting, shot blocking, behemoth in the middle of the paint. Like, that's just attractive. And he's only 24, so maybe that'll end up happening. And people, they seem to believe in Brad Stevens enough to maybe think that he can get it on him. I don't know. I have no idea with Miles Turner. I do like his potential. I liked him in college, but, he needs a little more seasoning. Tristan Thompson doesn't need any seasoning. He knows what he's good at. Let's just get one thing out of the way. He knows what he's there for: rebounding, defense, offensive rebounding in the paint, easy shots to the paint, lobs. He's going to do a lot of things that this team desperately needs. And they really needed somebody to go up against Bam Adebayo in last year's, and this feels weird to say it, but last year's Eastern Conference, or this past Eastern Conference Finals. Bam killed him.
Whenever the hell it was during the pandemic.
It happened. Tristan Thompson would have been a nice addition. And look, we've been kind of flirting around with this Tristan Thompson thing for a bit. I know a lot of people were at least curious and I would say enthusiastic about maybe adding a player of Tristan Thompson's caliber during the buyout portion of the season. I know people were thinking about that. Hoping for that didn't happen. Not sure why Cleveland didn't do that, but hey, whatever. I thought Brad Wanamaker, by the time it was all done, was a really solid backup point guard that would make really 3 or 4 dumb mistakes a game. And you bring in Marcus Teague, who's a little bit more of a veteran in that particular capacity. Jeff Teague. Marcus Teague's spelling was terrible. But Jeff Teague is a guy that they've chased, I think, for quite a bit. I think somebody has mentioned that it was like the white whale of Brad Stevens to get Jeff Teague and trying to get him in college.
Back to trying to get him in Butler.
Yeah, try to go back to college all the way back there. So this team needed veteran leadership last year. It was pretty obvious that they were missing like a vet who could bring them together. And they got one in Thompson, who's been there, done that, won a ring before. So there's some value there that you would never get out of Miles Turner. Like, as cool as Turner is, he doesn't have the pedigree that Thompson has. And people want to be like, oh, potential. Like, yeah, okay, cool. But Tristan Thompson's done this before. Okay, he's a grown adult in this team. It's a young team. Look, you got Tatum, Brown, Smart is like the elder statesman, Pritchard, Nesmith, Langford, Rob, Grant. I mean, there's 8 guys off the top of my head that are all like 25 and under. I mean, it's a young team. They need somebody with some experience. So both these make a lot of sense. It's not the ideal scenario, but again, Danny had to do what he had to do. And did a decent job. I mean, I think their front court's a lot better now than it was last year. I mean, we can, again, Cantor was a great locker room guy, but Tristan Thompson's better than him at a lot of things. And they needed a guy that can facilitate their offense because they lost Hayward, they lost the ball handler, and that's tough. Luckily, Smart's been a much better point guard the last year, 2 years or so he can take some of those responsibilities. Tatum's going to take some of those as well, I think, as he progresses forward. He's going to have to become more of a facilitator at that wing spot. They have Kemba, Smart, and getting a Teague at least gives you an adult, somebody for Pritchard to kind of get a little mentoring after as well. So I think it's all said and done, a slightly more interesting roster. I don't think they're better, though. I think, if Hayward's healthy, they're a much better roster, and that's what really sucks about this whole thing.
Quit living in the past, Evan. Hayward's gone. He's not coming back. You know,
just saying, hey, look, they're not. Look, are they better? They're not better. They're
Sure.
not better. Unless you have like improvements from Brown and Tatum that people are probably going to expect. If they take another leap, then fine. But this team's not better than they were last year.
Well, they're definitely not better, but it is interesting. Like, I think that they're a better team than the team that like knocked out, the Raptors and finished off the Sixers, that didn't have Hayward. I think that they have a little bit more depth. I think that Nesmith is going to be able to contribute early. I think he's going to be able to shoot off the bench. I think that they have probably a little bit more depth, like coming in. They're like Gordon Hayward makes this team better than what it is right now, but the team that, made it to the Eastern Conference Finals did so without Hayward for the most part after he sprained his ankle against Philly. So I think there is something there's something to that. Like, they're not the best that they could have been, but this is kind of a decent second place option, I guess.
So as we chat here with Tom Westerholm, Evan Valenti, I'm Adam Kaufman. I think y'all know that by now. If I were to rank the draftniks, the pundits, among us when it comes to prospects, Tom, you're right there at the top, and then Evan right after you, and I am a distant third at the bottom of the list. I don't know a lot about these two, other than obviously what I've taken the time to watch and to read since the Celtics drafted them. And I knew going into the draft, I could tell you as much as these two are acclaimed shooters. Nesmith obviously regarded as the best shooter in the draft. I think the Celtics did well to get who they got at the spots that they were. There were a lot of rumors about trading up, many of which I didn't really buy into, especially the people that were talking about Marcus Smart going to Golden State for the number 2 pick, or the C's trying to trade into the top 3 or package up to the top 6 and then move that pick, part of a Drew Holiday thing, yada, yada, yada. That stuff, it never really felt real to me. So the Celtics, all due respect to Yam Madar, we're not talking about him right now. Celtics add 2 guys that should be on Boston's roster. Maybe Pritchard spends a little time in Maine, but these guys really should both be on Boston's roster this year. And they appear to have that kind of, microwave instant buckets off the bench shooting that the Celtics have longed for basically since the Eddie House days. But I can't say that without saying this. So did Carson Edwards, and it didn't pan out, at least not yet. So what do you expect from these guys right here? What can you tell us?
Well, I mean, the thing with Carson is that he was always a streaky shooter in college. And I think the thing that people kind of latched onto, and understandably, because it's what everybody watched, but I mean, he was great in the tournament. But like that season, he shot like 36% from 3. He wasn't like super, super consistent. Nesmith, there's a small, like kind of, I don't want to call them red flags. There's small things to watch out for. Like, his shooting percentage looks amazing because he shot 52% from 3 his sophomore season, but it's worth remembering that was in 14 games. So it was a relatively small sample size, even though he shot about 8 threes a game, and his competition was real mediocre. He did not hit his team's best games before he was sidelined with an injury for the rest of the year. So there is that to keep in mind. That said, he's a knockdown shooter. I mean, he's really, really good. He's got great footwork off the ball. I saw a bunch of comparisons to JJ Redick. I think that's, probably we'll see if he shoots as well as Redick, but I think that's a type of player, kind of an archetype that he can follow offensively. I think he's a good player. I think he's going to be able to contribute. As somebody who, in a lot of my men's leagues, I average, somewhere between 15 to 20 points a game that are all on 3-pointers, that are all catch and shoot. I respect his game immensely. And I like his defensive potential. I don't think he's going to be some Tony Allen guy, but I do think that, he's strong, he's long, 6'6" with I think a 6'10" wingspan. There's a lot to like there. And I think that especially within like a Brad Stevens defense, there's like a very good chance that he comes out as a plus defender of some kind. So, I don't think the Celtics drafted some former superstar, some franchise building block or anything, but I think they picked up a guy who's going to be able to help them quite a bit and has, some nice NBA upside.
Yeah, I went in after we were done with the draft. I remember thinking, I liked the Pritchard pick quite a bit, and I wasn't as high on the Nesmith pick. And then the next day, I did a little more deep dive, and I flipped my response. I think the Nesmith pick was a real solid pick. The small sample size thing, I think people, I hear you, I get it. But when you're shooting 8 threes a game and hitting half of them, I don't care how many freaking games you play. It's pretty impressive. 14, and it's not like 14 games isn't a big sample size. It's a decent chunk of games. His form was fantastic. And I actually really enjoyed some of the things that Jerry Stackhouse, his coach of Vanderbilt, said about him. He talked about how he kind of reminds him of Allen Houston. And so I was like, that's interesting. I like that. So go back and watch some Allen Houston tape. And, I know it's tough because it's 90s basketball and it's like the fourth quarter and it's 68-62. It's just like, this is a tough watch right now. But the one thing I do like about Allen Houston, he's a really excellent either catch and shoot guy or a really proficient one dribble or two dribble pull-up guy, which is exactly what Nesmith kind of is. Don't ask Nesmith to do a lot of creation for you. He's not going to be able to do that. You could cite his role is just, it's just not that. And especially against the teams that he was playing against, the fact he didn't show it against like some of the I've never even heard of some of the teams they played last year. There were games, and I feel like I've never even. What does that even stand for? I don't know what the acronym stands for. So he's not going to be a big facilitator guy. It's going to be something maybe that he develops along the way. But he's going to be able to come in and shoot the hell out of basketball. I mean, he really is. And what's great is he knows how to relocate, off of, some sort of, he'll dish it out and then find a way to get the ball back and can open shots. He's great, coming off of screens, DHOs. I mean, you're going to see a lot of dribble handoffs next year, I think. And I'll be honest, the defensive stuff is what got me, I think, the most excited, though, because if you can defend a little bit on this team, you're going to see the floor. I mean, it's really how, Smart sees the floor. Go back to early Jaylen Brown. When Jaylen was playing well defensively, he saw the floor. When he wasn't, never saw the floor. And they need a guy to step in at the wing to defend after Hayward leaves. I mean, they desperately need it. So that 6'10" wingspan is going to be big. He's a grown adult. His diet is amazing. I don't know if anybody saw the video of him cooking in the kitchen. He was making French toast, but he's like, yeah, every day for lunch I have a salad with walnuts. I have a spinach salad with walnuts in it. And I'm like, I had a pizza. Like, what is this? This is crazy. So he seems like a full adult. He looks up to Chris Middleton, which I think is maybe his best outcome there. Both from Charleston, South Carolina, which is really cool. I'm a big fan. I think he's definitely a threat to be a big impact of a player. And what I thought at the time was, this was a shit, we missed out on Tyler Hero, we can't do that again pick. That's what it felt like to me. I mean, you think, what would this season have done with Tyler Hero, who went one pick before them, and he talked about how he thought he was going there anyway. This felt like we can't let this caliber of a shooter get by us again. We just can't do it. And again, there were intriguing options in front of them that I'm sure people were like, trade up for Halliburton or whatever. I get that, and that would have been cool too.
Vassell.
Vassell is another guy who can
yeah.
really shoot the crap out of the ball. Huge wingspan. I mean, goes on for days. But Nesmith is a real solid pick. I mean, really solid. He knows what he's good at. And I think there's some serious growth for a couple of things. But, I mean, he's going to be a guy, roll the ball out. He should be able to play right away.
Would you say, Tom, that the Celtics did well for themselves in the draft, or were there guys at the spots that they did pick? Obviously you can always imagine a world where they made trades, but at the spots that they did pick, were there guys that you would have preferred they land?
There were definitely guys, like I have no problem with the Nesmith pick. I like to, I have to, do like big boards and stuff like that. I kind of, for me personally, I kind of put guys more in tiers. I think that's a more useful way. Like Nesmith is right in that tier at 14.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was a good spot for him. I had a couple other guys up there too. I really liked RJ Hampton. Guys who, also could be good options, but I think that Nesmith was just fine there. 26, I had a bunch of guys ahead of Pritchard. I like even just point guards. I really liked Tyrell Terry. He ended up going 31st. That was a lot lower than I would have had him. There were some other guys too that I liked better than Pritchard. Even if you don't go, point guard, I really liked Desmond Bane, the guy they ended up picking and then trading to Memphis. But look, I mean, like Danny has seen a lot of Peyton Pritchard. He's clearly formed an opinion on him. And I think that if you trust, the thing you can trust about the Celtics scouting is that they have done the homework. Like they've been there, they've seen these guys. They have a very solid evaluation. Like they're not just throwing darts at a dartboard. And they've watched Pritchard for 4 years now. They've got a good idea of who he is and how he plays. If he was their guy like that, I understand it. I certainly see the vision. Like he can shoot, he can push the pace. I think he can compete for backup point guard minutes right away. So we'll see how it works out. He wouldn't have been like my top choice, but I'm not going to give the Celtics like a failing grade for the draft because they picked Peyton Pritchard, partly because I think they did well with Nesmith as well. So I think they got a couple of guys who can contribute, and how much they will, that's kind of what remains to be seen. But, not drafting Tyrell Terry is a hit to my draft board. I won't lie to you.
It hit me right in the heart. I couldn't believe they left it off.
He's going to be good, man.
I'm so mad. Like, well, the thing with Pritchard, though, and I like
he's Thibault all over again for people.
I don't think it's that bad. Although, Brandon Clark would have been nice too.
Mm-hmm.
The Pritchard pick, again, the more you read, and Chris Redden did a great job on Forbes with a really nice piece earlier in the week. But the Pritchard pick, if you watch him compete, it's more about like his motor and his competitiveness. Like, he doesn't back down from a challenge. He has done throughout high school, like all these huge events. I think he beat Jalen Brown's team in a tournament at some point in high school. Was like, I think on three 6A state championship teams for Oregon. I think don't fact check me on that, but he's 2 or 3, I think. So he's a guy that is a winner. So teams are going to like guys that are winners. He's Pac-12 Player of the Year last year. Was a finalist for the Player of the Year. Went to Obi Toppin, but was a finalist for that award as well. Can really shoot. And shoot in a couple awkward ways as well. And his vision, when it's good, is really fun. I mean, really fun. There are steps that he has to take as a pick and roll ball handler that Mike Schmidt's diagrams over a Draft Express on ESPN. If you want to check that out, it's great. But there's a lot of very advanced reads that he needs to get better at, because if he wants to take a real big leap, he's going to have to be able to distribute the ball like offhand, cross court to the wide open shooter, because that's the right play. But I like the pick because he can really shoot. He's got a good head on his shoulders. I think he'll compete defensively. He's not 5'10" like Carson Edwards. He's 6'2", so that's a little bit better. And he's a winner. And I don't know if anybody heard the Bill Walton rant on Peyton Pritchard, why I should take him, and it went in like 18 different directions. But at the end of the day, he's like, I really like Peyton Pritchard. So look, I like Bill Walton. Bill Walton's funny to me, and if Bill Walton likes it, then I'm going to be happy about it. That's all.
What is, if you were to, and we're going to get to the Twitter questions in a second, but if you were to attempt to, this is very difficult, Tom, if you were to attempt to project ahead to, let's say, midseason, and in a pretend world that doesn't exist where everybody is healthy as well, how does this break down in terms of, depth chart to you, and also just, like, where are the shots going? In order for Jason Tatum to continue to evolve, obviously he's going to want 20 shots a game. Jaylen Brown has certainly commanded X number of shots per game, whether that's 12 to 15. You look at a guy like, Marcus, we know, wants to shoot. Marcus, whether he should or not, Marcus Smart wants to shoot, and there are going to be those nights where he's still putting up 8 to 10 3-pointers. Not on the regular. It's usually going to be around, 3 to 6, but there are going to be those nights that he's going to put up a boatload. Then you got these shooters that you bring in. Jeff Teague is still going to get his off the bench. I'm not so concerned about, the bigs, any of them really, contributing heavily to the offense. Maybe they're in the ballpark of 8-10 points a game, any of those three, between Robert Williams, obviously Tristan Thompson, and Daniel Tice coming back as well. I'm not even certain who's going to start among those three, quite frankly, even though that doesn't really matter. But if you were to just look at who is sort of commanding the shots and who's getting theirs in order for everyone to be content, what does this look like?
Well, I mean, I think that,
and I didn't even mention Kemba, by the way.
Yeah, I was gonna say. I mean, I think that you broke it down pretty well. I mean, I think that I think there's plenty of room for, because look, I mean, everybody understands that on this team, if you are not Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, or Kemba Walker when he's hopefully healthy, then your job is to make Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, and Kemba Walker better. Is to make their jobs easier. And Nesmith basically said as much after he was drafted. He called himself an absolute sniper, which I loved. And then he immediately started talking about I know that I am here to try to make life easier for Tatum. That's what my role is. So I think that will be pretty well defined on this year's team. Kemba was definitely the most, eager to praise Tatum, eager to, of kind of the veterans last year, he Tatum, Jaylen, he loved talking about those guys. Or at very least, anytime we asked about them, he was happy to talk about them. I don't know if he loved talking to the media. Nobody does. But he, I think that all those guys are going to get what they need. And then it's just going to kind of be a night-to-night thing with everyone else. Did they need Nesmith to, take 5 3-pointers tonight? great. He can do that. Did they need, Romeo Langford to come in and try to get them like 10 points off the bench? Like, great, he can try to do that. But it's not going to, if there's guys who are going to have egos, if there's guys who are going to be like, I deserve more, I don't know that they'll be on the team very long, because like this team is now the Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, and, Kemba Walker show. And, that's a real good trio. But, it is going to be, it's going to be interesting to see how well it works this season.
Also a pretty good answer to why Gordon Hayward's not around anymore, because it is the Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, Kemba Walker show, and he was number 4.
Well, and look, I mean, if the Celtics have been willing to give him, 4 years and $120 million, I could see him being like, all right, yeah, I can be number 4 behind all that. But yeah, here we are.
All right, folks, before we get to your questions, which are coming up next, I got to tell you, the stress of daily life weighs on all of us. I've been dealing with a lot of it over the course of the last week in the NBA and trying to keep up with all this and stay up at all hours, tweeting at all times. But you have all been very kind to me. So whether you are an elite athlete or a regular person, and I am the picture of that, trying to get through the day, muscle pain, muscle tension, it's a real thing. It stinks. Tom could probably speak to it. He's out there in the men's league basketball games. He feels muscle pain. He knows happens to us when we get older. And that is why I use Theragun. It is the handheld percussive therapy device that releases your deepest muscle tension using a scientifically calibrated combination of depth, speed, and power. If I had mine handy, I'd display it for you on video right now, because that you wouldn't even know, other than my moaning in approval, how wonderful this thing is. It's as quiet as an electric toothbrush. It's because the all-new Gen 4 Theragun has a proprietary brushless motor. It's so quiet you will wonder, seriously, if it is even on. Is this thing working? Oh, but let me tell you, it's working. While you soothe your aching muscles with Theragun's signature power, amplitude, and effectiveness, you will not get a better feeling. You have no idea what you're missing out on. You got to order one. The Theragun, it's a must-have for everyone, and just in time for the holidays as well. Get the Theragun tool for ideal relaxation today. Give your body the break it so badly needs. Try Theragun for 30 days. Just give it a try. There's no substitute for the Theragun Gen 4 with an OLED screen, personalized Theragun app, and the quiet and power. I keep telling you about the power. You need it. Starting at only $199. Go to Theragun.com/beat. Do it right now. Get your Gen 4 Theragun today. Theragun.com/beat. Again, that is Theragun.com/beat. Tom, I don't know if you've done your holiday shopping yet, but I got to tell you, this is something you got to throw in a stocking, pal.
Like, you could not have sold it more.
I got some back pain right now from all the chores I do today. I'd kill for a Theragun right now.
Oh, I was out there the other day with the leaf blower, couple hours, and I realized that's not hard labor. I mean, a rake and a tarp, that's hard labor. A leaf blower, but still, that thing weighs on you after a little while. I'm not a strong guy. It gets heavy after a bit. I'm telling you, relax that muscle pain. All right. I
need to talk to the fact that you have some muscle tension after using a leaf blower for a few hours. you might want to maybe do some calisthenics or something, or maybe, do some working out at home.
I have muscle tension just from talking to people about the Celtics lately.
There you go.
With all that's been happening.
Fair enough.
We have, so I had asked for questions on Twitter, and the people, they did not disappoint. I have a lot. Let's get to as many as we can. And to do that, I think we need to go rapid fire. So anyone that has anything to say among the three of us, jump in, offer an opinion, then we'll move on to the next. And I will try, as I read through them for the first time, to not be repetitive, because I'm sure a lot of them are pretty similar with regard to, like, WTF with the Gordon Hayward situation. Brian says, who should the Celtics target if they, A, get a trade exception from Charlotte, or B, do not get a trade exception from Charlotte? What do you think?
I have a tough time with direct names here, just because there's so many potential options. You just don't know who might shake free. But I think that the answer is wings. You should be targeting wings here. You need some versatility, especially on the defensive end. I know we touched on it before, but losing Hayward on the defensive end is a big deal. So I would be very focused on any wing that I think can play some defense, and I would just trust that the offense is going to be there, from everybody that you're relying on for offense that's already on the roster.
Have you got a dream guy out there? And I have to tell you, Aaron Baines is no longer available, pal. He's signed with Toronto while we've been talking. Well,
Toronto will treat him well. Tom's right on the money here. Barring an injury, a specific group so let's say Jeff T goes down. All right, so you might want to get a guard. All right. So, but that being said, wings and Boston is focused on that primarily. I mean, it's why they drafted Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown 2 straight years in a row. You add Nesmith in that particular regard, even when Hayward was sort of on the roster. They need wings, and I'm not quite sure who the name is. People are going to throw out like Bradley Beal because he makes a ton of money. People are going to throw out Karl Anthony Towns because he makes a ton of money. Don't
Beal's
count on
Tatum's
that.
guy.
Yeah, I wouldn't count on any of those two things. I just wouldn't, because you have to give something to get those two guys. I don't think Boston has. I mean, they do, but I don't think they want to do that. So I agree with Tom. I think it's some sort of defensive wing who maybe can shoot threes. Like a PJ Tucker type. I don't know if it's not going to be PJ, but it's somebody like that.
Antonio says, how many more leaps will Tatum and Brown make moving forward with their careers? And I think you could argue that, and this is me, not Antonio, I think you could argue that Tatum is, to some, a top 10 player now, certainly top 15. I think he could absolutely vault into the top 5 conversation, certainly by the end of his contract. It may take a couple of years to get there. There's a ton of talent in that league, and he's still incredibly young at 22 years old. Brown, again, I think he can be and will be a perennial all-star, but that's how I view the continued growth. We could, Tom, if you want to delve into specific facets of their game that they could improve at, feel free.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, I think that Tatum, we started to see it last year with his floater game. I think that's huge for him. I mean, when he gets downhill and he can get to the rim like that and he can, just kind of loft it over people. I mean, that's just a tough shot to defend. It keeps defenses off balance. And I think that's going to be there for him a lot. So I think that's a big part of it. Just kind of finishing around the rim. That's big too. I mean, Jaylen, I think it's fair to he's a worker. He's going to keep working and working and working. The levels that he's already jumped, are impressive. And to me, they almost suggest certainly I'm sure he's going to try to go up another level, but it's how much more can you realistically ask from a guy? He went from, a bench player to an all-star just purely off, or close to an all-star at least, just by working his tail off. So, I mean, sure, he might take another leap up, but if he doesn't, I think it's worth remembering that this guy has gotten himself to quite an impressive level already. I'm with you on Tatum though. I mean, I think you're talking top 5 in a few years, and I don't think that's ridiculous at all.
I also don't think with regard to, and this is a larger conversation we'll save for another time, but with regard to Jason Tatum, for anyone out there, it's he should average 30 points a game. Do I think he's capable of that? No question. He has showcased that. I mean, hell, he basically did it from the All-Star game on last year and in through the rest of the regular season into the bubble. But I don't think you're looking for him to do that with all of those pieces around him that we already kind of talked about. I think if he's sitting around 25 a game, that's more than acceptable as long as he's, reasonably efficient with his shot. You don't want him, taking 25 shots a game to average 25 points, obviously. But does he need to average 30 points? I don't think so. Let's go to the next one, though.
I want to just point out real quick, defensively, both of them could use a little bit of work. And if Jaylen becomes a better off-ball defender, then we're really talking, because Jaylen is an excellent on-ball defender, but his off-ball stuff drives me crazy sometimes. But if they could both lock in a little bit better on that end, the top 5 stuff for Tatum, absolutely, no question.
I think Tatum's really good on that end already.
Yeah.
He's pretty good. He's pretty versatile too.
Elite. Yep.
I love this from Shamrocks and Shenanigans. Also love the name. With Danny's stockpile of assets now gone, if you're Danny Ainge, what do you see as your biggest trade asset in the event a desirable player becomes available via trade? And I'll leave that open a little bit in the event that Boston acquires a $20 or $30 million trade exception, obviously, in this deal with Charlotte potentially. But with what they currently have, what is the answer to that question, Tom?
I mean, it's whatever you want it to be, man. If there's a guy out there that's so.
Well, but it's not, right? Because Tatum's not going anywhere, Brown's not going anywhere.
I would probably, but I mean, I think if the right guy comes available, you're gonna have to have a conversation, right? I mean, if Beal becomes available and you like him, I think you have to talk. If that's a guy that you think can vault your roster to the next level, I mean, I think you have to weigh some things. Yeah, I mean. I think that the Celtics will have to have uncomfortable conversations if certain guys become available, and those might not be conversations that fans will like, but I mean, this team has made it quite clear that what they expect and what they want to work for is a championship. And, to do that, sometimes you have to make uncomfortable decisions. So I don't know. We'll see. We'll see.
From Raphael, recent picks in Tristan Thompson and Jeff Teague, should that be enough to reach the finals? And I will remind you, this team, of course, was just in the conference finals.
I'll be honest here. It's tough, unless
I would agree.
Neesmith's going to be or Pritchard's going to be, a really awesome offensive player from the jump. I have a hard time seeing it. I think, Milwaukee. We'll see. I don't buy Milwaukee yet either. By the way, Coach Bud's still a coach, and if he still isn't going to play Giannis 37 minutes a game when it matters, then it doesn't matter who the hell they had on their roster. The Brooklyn thing is what really is interesting here. What does Brooklyn look like? The Kyrie, KD team up. We've never seen it. Don't know what to expect. I mean, it could be really high level basketball. It could be a giant mess. No.
And will Harden wind up there?
Yeah, we have no clue. We have no idea. So I'll just say no. I don't think they have done it. Again, unless Tatum is going to be unreal and so is Brown. Fine, but I don't think they've done enough yet.
I think there's pathways to it, but I think you're right I think you're exactly right that like part of the problem is that other teams got better. Like, Philly got better and is being run by, very competently now. So like, I think that those things matter and, things could break, right? Like Miami ended up in the finals last year and I don't think that they were the best team in the Eastern Conference, but like, you don't like to be in a position, if you're hoping to make the finals, you don't like to be in a position of relying on things breaking right.
Yeah, better front office, and as much as people probably think I hate him listening to this podcast, Doc Rivers better coach than Brett Brown, folks. So they've upgraded. Little inside.
Nobody blows 3-1 leads like Doc, though.
Yeah, ain't that the truth? From I never doubted. Do you think Grant Williams might be asked to guard more small forwards now that Thompson's here, and also you think he can do it?
I think small forwards would be tough for Grant. He works like crazy on the defensive end. I mean, before every game, like all of what he does is just like watch film and run defensive drills. So he really, really does work on that end. That said, he was working to try to contain point guards so that he could guard centers, so that he could be a small ball five. Guarding small forwards, guarding wings, that kind of thing. That's a very different type of ask. That's kind of getting through things off the ball. That's, like being really attentive on that end. So I don't know how much they're going to ask him to do that. I think that the Celtics are going to kind of go by platoon, at the big position, kind of the way they did this last year. I think he'll get some minutes as the small ball center in that. I have a hard time seeing him being put out there kind of guarding threes at this stage in his career.
So Ozzy says, speaking for all of us, what's the soonest we hear about this Hayward to the Hornets situation?
I wish I had an answer for you, Ozzy. I do not. Man, this is like.
Could you attempt to forecast what this deal is going to look like, by the way, assuming it is a sign and trade? Are we talking about like Cody Zeller in a trade exception? Is it just a big trade exception? Is it, picks in a trade exception? What do you think this looks like?
I mean, I think part of it depends on like, can they rope in another team? I think it's not impossible that they rope in another team and that they just kind of get something done with the traded player exception right now. Because, like Evan was saying earlier, like, sometimes those things just go unused and then it's like, well, what was this all for? So, I think it's possible that they try to rope somebody in right away and, see what they can get. As far as players go, like, you just don't know who's going to be able to shake free at this point. It is really tough to forecast any exact names.
I love this here from Brian. What do you think the Celtics, he says 9-man rotation. I'm going to make it 10 because Brad doesn't go 9. What do you think the 9-man or 10-man rotation looks like here, just pretending everybody's healthy right now? Smart off the bench is a 2 or a 3. What does the bench scoring, or where's the bench scoring come from? So I'll start you off. We know obviously it's Tatum, it's Brown, it's Kemba, it's Smart, it's I think that Thompson and Williams and Teague and Tice are probably all in there. That's 8.
Okay.
Langford in a perfect world is in there, obviously. So that's 9 right there, without even talking about these rookies or Grant Williams. That would be 10. Shemi Ojeleye is not involved in what I just mentioned. I mean, would you construct any of that differently?
Now I got to try to remember what players are employed by the Boston Celtics, but I think Neesmith would probably be in there. I think he's gonna have a chance at least to earn some minutes because I mean he's just especially like if you take Romeo out, since it sounds like he'll be out for the start of the season, with his injury as well. So yeah, I think I would slot Neesmith in there somewhere. But I think that's a pretty good list. You could talk like obviously Teague is a backup point guard. If Smart is like the 2, you might need a little bit more ball handling in there somehow as well. Yeah, it's going to be complicated, man. And it's going to be interesting to see how it shakes out. But I do think that Neesmith is going to slot in because I think he makes everybody's life a little easier with his spacing.
For the people that can't sleep at night, VB17 says teams currently constructed better than the team that reached the Eastern Conference Finals. Hayward was obviously out, right? Optics of losing a free agent notwithstanding, how is the offseason not considered a positive right now?
Well, I think it's not considered a positive because you lost Gordon Hayward, and that hurts because he's a really good player, and they would be better if they had him. But to his point, I think that's kind of what I was touching on earlier. Like, this is a similar team to the team that knocked out the Raptors. So depending on how good you feel about that team, I think their bench is a little bit deeper. So, I think there's something there. I think this is going to be a very solid basketball team with a chance to make a little noise.
Alex says, could John Collins be on the move? Would he be a desirable target for Boston?
He's interesting. I think he could be on the move. I mean, I'm incredibly high on Onyeka Okongwu. He was when my final draft board came out, because it shifted much more than I was comfortable with. He was number one on my board, just because he's super versatile defender and all that. Man, Collins, I don't know. I don't know how he would fit on the Celtics. I think they're doing pretty well right now. With their big situation, I don't know whether they'd be willing to give up like the assets that would be necessary to bring back Collins. Especially not to improve. Daniel Tice did well last season. Tristan Thompson could be the answer against some of these stronger bigs. So I would probably pass on him, but he's an intriguing guy for sure.
Boston sports. Do you see Boston bringing IT4 potentially back? Christ, no.
He's not coming back.
No room for him. It doesn't make a lick of sense. And it's not 2016 anymore. Why are we dealing with this every single day? This is not an attack on the person asking the question, because I don't know about you guys. I've received this question, I don't know how many times, whether it's in the last few days or in the last couple of years. It doesn't make sense.
No, it does not.
Love y'all. Love IT. But no.
Yeah.
It's just,
it was so much fun. Like it was fun to live in 2016. But yeah,
2016 was awesome.
It was so much better than 2020. Right? Whatever.
He can't defend. He's lost a lot. He's just not. They already have enough small guards. You don't need another one.
Yeah.
And honestly, and ego matters. And this is not me being critical of IT, like anybody in that situation, where you go from being a fringe MVP candidate. I mean, he was top 5 that last year, a fringe MVP candidate, to coming back and you just, you got your roll off the bench like that. And maybe you play, he can go and have that role somewhere. But having it in Boston, where all of a sudden you're just like a fan favorite that doesn't really contribute anymore, that would be tough to stomach, I would think, from a mental standpoint more than anything else, even if he is right physically. But that's, again, that's a whole other thing. JR says, are the Celtics done with their roster? To which I say, JR,
Never.
Is Danny Ainge ever done with his roster?
Never.
I think that's exactly right. Yeah. And again, I think that it's worth watching what happens with the TPE and if they manage to rope in a third team.
Michael says, forgetting about Bogdanovich, if the Celtics create a trade exception from the Hornets sign and trade, which player or players, if you had to make a prediction, do you see them targeting or waiting to fall out of favor with their team between this offseason and next, since they have a year to use it? Thanks, Adam. Love the podcast. Thank you, Michael. We love you. What do you think, Tom?
I know this is like such a cop-out answer. I'm going to defer because, again, I don't know who's going to shake free. But, I think it's got to be a wing. I think that's got to be who you're targeting. And, that's the biggest area of need right now.
From a user that already goes by Tristan Thompson season, what does 2021 look like for guys like Romeo, Grant, Edwards, and Tremont? I noticed you left Taco out of there, but
hurtful.
We'll ignore that.
Yeah.
What's it look like for the young guys here trying to fit in with all those other guys that we already mentioned?
So I have some concerns about Romeo.
The main Red Claws are going to be loaded.
They are.
That's what.
I have some concerns about Romeo, not because I don't think that he can contribute from a talent perspective, but because yet again, he's missing out on like the start of the season when a lot of, rotations start to be established. So I think that's a little bit concerning for him. I think he's a talented player. I think he's a much more talented defender than I thought coming in. So there's certainly a place for him. But, that's certainly something to watch. I have a hard time seeing, Carson Edwards break into the rotation. Kind of a hard time seeing Tremont Waters, even though, I think that there's, some intriguing stuff there. Like Peyton Pritchard is just taller. Like at some point that matters, like he's just a bigger dude. And if he's ready to go, having, even if it's just a few inches, like that matters, in terms of especially defensively. So, we'll see with them. As far as I believe Grant was the other one that was mentioned. I think Grant will get some real minutes. Again, I think the big situation is going to be kind of a platoon, and it's going to kind of matter like matchup wise who they're facing. But Grant showed some real promise as a small ball 5. Maybe he can hit enough threes to space the floor enough to be, a 4 a little bit here and there. I don't think that's impossible. So he should get some real minutes. I think that he'll be in the rotation. As far as the other 3 with Romeo, I think it just kind of comes down to health. And with the other 2, I mean, they've got to show that they can beat out guys who are a lot taller than they are.
From Lewis here, Tom, and I mentioned earlier that I don't have notes. What I do have is a broken brain, though. Lewis, you'd be more equipped to answer this from Lewis. Would you have preferred getting Miles Turner and Doug McDermott, or are you happy getting Tristan Thompson and Jeff Teague? And also, was it even an either or could you have had all 4 of them?
No, I don't think you probably could have had all 4 of them.
Yeah, that's possible.
Is that possible?
Well, that's what I'm trying to think of right now. That's why I referred to the broken brain. That's what I'm.
Yeah, I know, because
little exception, obviously, on Tristan Thompson. Jeff Teague, you were able to slide in there as well. The Hayward.
The question is the tax. Where are they at with the tax if they acquired Turner and McDermott?
And right now they're going to be. Yeah, they'd probably be over it. Whereas right now they project to be under it. That's I guess what it comes down to.
Which matters
absorbing those guys and going into the tax. So that's what it is. That's what it boils down to.
Yeah.
So yes, you could have had all 4, but you wouldn't have wanted to.
Potentially, unless it would have affected. Yeah, you're right. Broken brain as well. But yeah, no, I mean, I think that the Celtics got kind of the better option of the 2. Because again, like with Turner, you're talking about $18 million a year for the next 3 years. With Thompson, you're talking about the mid-level exception for the next 2. As far as Teague versus McDermott, I mean, I kind of thought the Celtics should target a scoring point guard in the draft because I thought that would help with both the bench scoring and a backup point guard. So they got that. So, I mean, to me, that's a pretty good setup. Again, I think the Celtics would have liked to have gotten something back, something maybe concrete back for Hayward. We'll see if they do or not via the TPE. But, all things considered, I think that what they got was better than the draft pick, or was better than, the trade package that they were kind of looking at there.
Yeah, people have asked about the $5 million TPE there for Enes Kanter and the $2.5 million TPE, obviously, for Vincent Poirier. So kind of a 2-part question. One, do you see them trying to, because they've let TPEs expire in the past. It has happened. Do you see them using those within the next year that they can? And also, can you combine them? Can you get one player for $7.5 million, which I believe, the answer is yes.
You can combine them. I believe you can. And that's what would be really funny about if the one that they would get if they were to generate a Gordon Hayward, sign and trade. Because then you add them all up.
Suddenly you can get like a max contract guy. Potentially.
Well, that's just I don't think they'll use it because I just think, those guys don't become available, most of the time. But they'll have they'll have an option. They'll have a way to acquire a guy, which will be.
Here comes James Harden.
Yeah, well, I've always laughed because, for Tito, out there in Houston, he's just gonna say it feels kind of like a cheap guy, and if you could
he's
find
broke,
a way,
so
yeah, you could find a way to get him and shake him loose a little bit. Just saying it'd be there. I don't think they're gonna use it though. I think you can combine them. I believe you can combine them. I believe that's true.
You might. I'd have to look into it again. My impression was you couldn't, but you might be right. But I mean, the other thing to remember too, though, is if they are chasing one of those max contract guys, it's very possible that those guys you would have to use guys on your roster who make money to acquire them anyway. It's possible. Again, you're chasing a max contract guy. You might have to trade like a Jalen or a Smart or somebody who's making actual money. Just purely for the trade value, because they've already gotten rid of, because as has been noted, a lot of their draft picks are gone at this stage anyway. So, something to keep in mind as well, as you're looking at the exceptions and whether they can use all of them. But
let's do one more because obviously we've run long. We'll let you go. But here it is from Chris, a lengthy question. But it's a good way to kind of circle and recap everything, especially going back with Gordon Hayward. People keep talking about the Celtics' biggest free agent signings ever, leaving being a poor reflection on Boston Kyrie as well. I see it more as freak bad contracts happening. Do you agree Horford is clearly overpaid, worst contract in the NBA? Is Hayward? Is Kyrie? Can he stay healthy? And last, did Horford and Hayward actually want out, or was it just the money? How do you view that situation?
I view it in a couple ways. I think one, it really hammers home how disastrous that 2018-19 season was. I mean,
woof.
I mean, brutal. Obviously, Kyrie left, and Kyrie, you knew this when you got him that he was somewhat chaotic, and he was chaotic in Boston. Horford. I mean, I think that if you told Al Horford that the team would have looked the way that it looked in 2019-20, I think that there's a possibility that he'd be more amenable to sticking around. But again, he's coming off that 2018-19 season with the same bad taste in his mouth that everybody else was, and a team is going to offer him, like $109 million, I believe. That's a great situation.
Mm-hmm.
Like you can get out and you can get that. So with Hayward, it's tough to say. I mean, I think that he probably is looking forward to, not feeling
fresh start.
Yeah, like a fresh start, not being in Boston, all that. I don't know that it's a knock. I don't think it's a knock on Boston at all. I think it's just he had some of the toughest years of his career in Boston, and it's just sometimes you just want new scenery. So, I think it's those two things. I think that part of it is just we can't overstate the ripple effects of how bad that 2018-19 season was. And, just other teams offered up a lot of money. And I don't think that has to do with the organization. I just think it has to do with one really bad year more than anything else.
I cover the Celtics in a loose sense. I say that because I'm not a journalist. I'm not no one's at practice now, but back in the day, back pre-pandemic days when people like Tom were at practices and talking to these guys on the regular, I'm not one of those guys. But even if I were, having grown up here, I think I would still happily tell you I am a fan. And it still keeps me up at night, Tom, wondering, just the what ifs in sports almost get me more than the actualities of what happened. Even the good things, by the way, like the Tuck rule broke right, that broke right. I still think about though, if Gordon Hayward doesn't get hurt 5-15 into his Celtics career, if he has a healthy first season, it does in fact get crazy there with Kyrie Irving, those two guys do what was intended. That doesn't mean win a championship necessarily, but, they have a great first successful season. Those other guys don't get young and cocky early and develop a great deal as well, by the way. That's, Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown probably aren't where they are right now, if not for that first season as well. So there are pluses to, there are two sides to the coin, but that is just such a giant historical what if for me in Celtics history, that one freaking pass from Kyrie Irving and Gordon Hayward coming down wrong off that lob. And I'm not going to say they haven't recovered. They've gone to the conference finals 3 times in 4 years, but it does make me wonder if there was a title window in there that they missed.
We'll trace it back, right? Because in that season, Kyrie obviously got hurt. If Gordon hadn't gotten hurt, then the Celtics have another veteran star wing to give them some offense. Maybe in that, that 2017-18 run where they lost in Game 7 because they went so cold, maybe they have a guy who can help kind of calm them down. Maybe they've got a guy who can just knock down a couple mid-range jumpers and keep them in that game, long enough to pull it out and make a run to the finals. Maybe Tatum, Jaylen, and Gordon develop something as a trio because
maybe Rozier doesn't take 11 threes in that Game 7.
Maybe Terry Rozier doesn't take 11 threes. Then you move on to the next season and it's again, so much of that season was thrown off by the fact that Gordon Hayward just was not Gordon Hayward, and he wasn't even close realistically. You just you plug those two what ifs in, and you might be talking about a completely different team. So yeah, no, I 100% understand losing sleep over that one because that has had a lot of ripple effects on the Celtics in a lot of really negative ways for a team that really looked like it was in too good of a situation to fail, in those early years, given how good their youth was and how talented their veterans were.
Well, and you just think about, and this is a whole other rabbit hole, man, but you think about cap manipulation, and because nobody would have thought Celtics would be able to wiggle their way around, losing the guys that they lost and still being able to bring in a max guy in Kemba Walker. So like you can always maneuver certain things. Who knows? Like they have a great first year, maybe flirt with a championship. I mean, they kind of already did, even though people didn't view them as a realistic contender to win it. Obviously, they were still in that Final Four. Kyrie has a great experience in Boston that first season. I mean, hell, like we could be talking about Kevin Durant now being a Celtic. You know what I mean? Like there are so many different avenues that could have got, so many other timelines, if for community fans out there, that could have gone, and it blows my mind. But then again, I still think about the Kevin Garnett and Kendrick Perkins injuries after they won a championship as well. So what the hell? That's sports, right?
Yeah, it doesn't feel like this is the timeline where everything's burning down when
Troy comes in with the pizza.
Yeah, exactly. I don't think that's where we are. I think that it's one of the other ones. But yeah, it's definitely not the one where Jeff comes back and everyone's happy.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you all for your questions, by the way. Yeah, all of them. We appreciate all your questions. Again, this show brought to you by betonline.ag today. For your exclusive, go there. For your exclusive sign-up bonus, go to theragun.com/beat. Get $150 off select items in time for the holidays as well, which are rapidly approaching. Who knows? Maybe there's some Black Friday deals that people can look into later this week as well. Man, I was hoping we'd have the Hayward situation finalized by the time we were done. Clearly not the case, so we will live on in wonderment in the coming days. But this was fun. It was good to just recap what has been a very eventful week for the Celtics here with you, Tom.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on, guys.
I want to leave us with a good note here. This is a great quote from Michael Pina, who just awesome, did a great story on Jaylen Brown for GQ. Yeah. So just to end the pod on a great note here. It says, didn't make the story, but with Jason Tatum to extension official, this is what he told me a few weeks back when I asked why he and Jaylen could work so well together. Quote, come into the NBA, you hear a lot of stories, and they draft the guy who can take your spot. There can be some animosity between guys without even knowing, just something to secure their job, whatever it may be. But with JB, the one thing about us is we always push each other, and we always understand we need each other, and we're not trying to get in the way or hold each other back. We're trying to lift each other up because there's enough room for both of us to shine. So you're two, young superstars on the same page. That's nice. I like that.
Well, if that doesn't send Celtics fans 6 to midnight, I don't know what will. Just terrific. We appreciate everyone being here with us. M. Valenti, Tom Westerholm. I'm Adam Kaufman. We'll talk to you again next week.